Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We take it for granted when we're driving down the expressway, freeway, highway, whatever it might be, and we see trucks transporting material, potentially hazardous waste. What goes into that? The safety measures that have to be adhered to make sure that we're all safe, us, our family, all of that. This guy makes sure that gets done. Companies hire him to make sure that they're complying. He's worked with the federal government before. He works with lots of companies to make sure carrier transporters are doing it right. We're going to talk about hazmat today. What's involved in that? The certification, the training, the guidelines. This is Safety First with Matt Freeman. And here he is. Matt, welcome. How you doing?
Hey, thanks, Steve. Doing well. Back home in the U.S. and getting caught up in things. So it's always a challenge when you leave for a little bit and then you kind of come back to reality.
And I want to bounce back to you're back in the U.S. because you were in Mexico, but you were there because a company is building out. I want to say containers, but tanks.
Cargo tanks. Cargo tanks. Yeah.
Cargo tanks. And you're there to make sure that they're being built right because they are eventually going to be coming into the U.S. So you go around the world, pretty much.
Pretty much. We got customers in Europe, over the U.S., North America. So we help anybody that comes in. And the reason I was there in Mexico was for training, making sure these guys are meeting the requirements. You come into the United States, you still got to follow the guidelines. That's one thing they check. Are you following U.S. guidelines to bring your equipment, your transports here? So
we started talking about the cargo tanks and the placards that go on them to designate what's in them. And as soon as you said it, red and yellow, I got the visual. Like I literally saw myself in my mind driving down the road and seeing one of those, like let's say it's hauling, diesel, whatever it might be, and those designations. That's just a part of it. There's so much more that goes into it. And in your career path, you were one of the hazardous material specialists conducting investigations, correct?
Correct. That's very correct.
Wow. When you say investigations, are we referring to when, unfortunately things go wrong?
Not always.
Okay.
When you go into, when you're doing an investigation, another term is used is compliance review. So you're going and looking at the compliance.
Okay.
Whatever reason you may enter. Sometimes it is bad. The reason on there is because there's incident. Sometimes it's because that they are a hazmat company and they are checked frequently. Typically, it's about a 3-year span for every hazmat company out there that you're going in and making sure they're staying with compliance. And a part of that, you're looking at, their record for the previous 12 months on, what's been going on. So if there are issues, that's what you're looking for, along with training and everything else. So, yes.
So when you say compliance review, is that coming from a place of the federal government or the state government saying that you guys got to do this, or is it you just being hired by companies to make sure that, you're investigating to make sure that they comply?
Kind of both. In the world that I used to work, is an investigation. Your report was a compliance review that you wrote out. Okay. And then what all your findings were in that report. That's what you gave to the customer, to the transportation company at the time that I was looking at. And then, you would go back and you would file, the report, and depending on the deficiencies that you discovered, and penalties may or could be assessed. Okay. On this side of it, yes, I do the same thing. Obviously, I'm not giving penalties, but we're getting prepared, or we are preparing companies on the findings. How did you can only move forward. So, hey, we found a mistake here, guys. Can't change that. It's already happened. But this is how we move forward. The government wants to see you move forward than backwards. They want to see you finding your own mistake and making improvements on that mistake. The hope is, real quick here, is that mistake falls out of that 12-month range. So we found it. It's farther out than 12 months. We've corrected it. So when the government comes in, or whoever the investigator or state is that comes in, that's off your record now. Okay. Now it's still there, but they're only looking at a sample of 12 months for particular things. So that's what we hope for whenever we work with our companies, and they do have some issues. And there's always issues out there that you want to help make better, and hopefully they're not major issues. It's little things you're tweaking.
When you say it's still out there, it's out of the 12-month window, does it still count against you? Like, for example, let's say there was, gosh forbid, an accident, and the media was looking into it. Would
Mhm.
they be able to see, even though it's outside the 12-month window, would they able to see, something, an infraction, and then turn around and say the company has had a history of, issues?
Mhm.
Would that be publicly accessible, or would it just be off to the side?
Almost everything is public accessible, really. So there's a
Mm,
system called, we kind of talked about this, when we first kind of talked about the regulations, called a safety management system. And that system is where anybody can go in. Part of it is called safer.net. Okay.
ah,
Um, and anyway, it shows a 24-month history.
wow.
So now there is stuff on there that it doesn't show drivers' names and things like that, but you can see like roadside inspections, anything major that's been going on. You can also look at a sample of the pattern of what the violations were. So if they're having issues with maintenance, okay, you can click on the maintenance basics, what they call them, and it will show you the pattern. So if there's, you know, where the violations are, it can go like this. You always want to see it go down if it was up, okay, but you will see it. The public can see that. Now on the federal side, obviously they see everything. They see the driver's names, what equipment it was, just because it's that big database. So every time a roadside stop happens, those infractions or inspections go into that system. So, yeah, everybody sees it, and you
Wow.
just got to know where to look and how to look. Yeah.
Safer.net.
hmm
Mm.
And let
There's
me let me let me pull that up. I will verify that,
Sure.
and we can keep talking. I'll pull it up here for us.
Yeah, sure. I mean, even the fact that it's something's accessible, all the more reason why, if you're a motor carrier company, why should they should make sure that they're looking at things very closely, having somebody like you come in and analyze and investigate everything, because it's all out there. Let's say, you're driving down the road. I'm going hypothetical here. Vehicle cuts you off. Maybe a tanker is driving erratically, and then you want to report it. So you go to the website and you say, "Oh, well, they have a history." It just doesn't bode well for a company, that has infractions, or any company that has anything, because the public can see it.
Yeah. So let me give you that exact website. It's safer.fmcsa.dot.gov.
Gotcha. Okay. Say it one more time.
Let
Maybe we'll put it on the screen.
Yeah, it's safer, SAFER dot FMCSA .dot.gov.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, and that's where if you're working with any carrier, you can go in there and look at it. For instance, third parties, if they want to hire, say, Steve, you have a trucking company, and they want to say, hey, is Steve got a good rating? We don't want our product going down the road and having a bad company. They can go in there and say, oh, hey, he's got a good rating. He's good to go. We will trust this. Now, if you have a bad rating, chances of them picking you may be slim, you know. So that's what they're doing. So that is public knowledge, and it's only so much that's allowed for the public to see. It's just the general information. Someone who
Well,
understands the roadside stuff, they're gonna
sure.
they're gonna be able to pick it apart.
Sure. And we don't need to see the driver's names, obviously. You made that clear, but just the fact that it's out there, all the
Mhm.
more reason to make sure that it's not out there, by
Exactly.
taking those steps. When it comes, Matt, when it comes to hazardous materials and
Mhm.
transporting that, what are some of the safety situations that are involved in that?
Well, to go back. Well, let's go back to training.
Sure.
Okay. So, the safety part of that is, anytime there's a change of job function with hazmat, okay, you got to have what they call initial training for that function. You have when they transfer into that position, you got 90 days to get that initial training completed. Okay. After that, it's every 3 year, a minimum of every 3 years, they have to have what they call recurrent training or refresher training, which is what we do. The number one violation out there has been for a long time is training. Folks neglect to do the training. It happens. It's a norm. It's not that they do it on purpose. It's just companies run and get so busy that the last thing they, is on their mind is getting these guys trained. And from what I have seen is a lot of times companies have a probationary period for their employees. And then they don't think about doing the training until they know they don't put the money into the training until they know they've met that probationary period. That's where I've seen a lot of mistakes. That's where at least of my customers that I've worked with, and try to say, hey, listen, guys, you missed it. I'm not saying everybody I work with does that, but that has been some of the things we've come across. And, you got to get them trained up. That's because hazmat training is required according to 49 CFR, which covers transportation for all companies, hazmat companies, non-hazmat companies. So to answer your question, it is important for these guys to go through the training, because part of that is function-specific training. So depending on what their job function is, the rules and regulations state that you have to have training over that function. So that's kind of a catch-all in a sense.
Let's go back to the probationary period. How long does that last, and how would it be decided if somebody's going to go on that probation, a driver's going to be on probation?
So the probation period is usually, it's a customer thing. It's a company thing. Okay. But the rules and regulations, doesn't care if you're in probation. The rules say you have 90 days to complete your initial training. If an investigator comes in there within a year's time frame, and they go back and see that driver or employee, hazmat employee, did not have the training within 90 days, guess what? They found a violation. Okay. So that was the number one thing anytime I'd go into a company was training. I always found training violations, because some companies, depending on who they were, they might do a partial training, but they didn't have it all. It wasn't always that they were missing everything. There was just certain categories of the 4 they weren't doing. And depending on if they were a company that was required to have a security plan, they have to do what they call in-depth security training, and then they have to have training on that. So it just really depends on what the company was transporting, how it falls into the regulations on the in-depth of their training that they're required to have.
Now, when you say the company connects for the probation, is that the company hiring the motor carrier or the carrier themselves?
It's the company.
So let's give an example. I have a fuel company looking for a new company to transport my fuel. So I find Matt's fuel transport company, and hey, I want to hire you. How does that process work, and how does a probation come into play?
So again, probation is just a term I use for companies who, when they're hiring people, they put all their employees through a probation period. Okay. Some might say, hey, there's no probation period. Some might have it. I just run into problems where these guys don't want to invest a whole lot into the employee if they're on probation. They want to wait to know they're going to stay, because it costs a lot of money to put them through training.
Okay.
Wow. But to answer your question, to kind of go back on, so you're hiring me. I always recommend that you vet out the company that you're going to hire. You want to make sure they meet all the compliance that's required. So if they do get in trouble, if they do get audited or investigated, where there's an investigation or compliance review going to be conducted, you want to make sure that they have their training, their CDLs are good, they have all their ducks in a row, so you're getting a good company. So that's what you'd be asking me, and then that's a recommendation. It's not a requirement, but again, the if I'm going to hire a third party, I want to make sure they're a good company. And that's where all those things kind of take place on what I would recommend.
When you do an investigation,
Mm-hmm.
or as we identified, looking at a company and seeing what's going on there, can you give me a percentage on average? This is not scientific. On average, where you find issues. 100% means every single time I find something. Where do you think it would sit?
From personal experience, I've never been to a customer or in my prior life doing enforcement. I have, I think maybe 3 times in my career I've ever come out of a company, both enforcement and non-enforcement, where I didn't find something.
Wow. And again, that could be major stuff, that could be smaller stuff, but
That's right.
it's stuff.
Mhm. Yeah. When you go in and you don't, and right now you don't do any justice, even especially now on this side of it. If I go into a company and don't find anything, you want to find all the stuff where there's defects, deficiencies, so they don't have that problem down the road. So sometimes they don't realize they have issues. I've had companies in my past, in the enforcement world. He's my best driver, my best truck. And next thing you know, I'm going through it and in the enforcement world thinking, hey, I like hearing that, but then you start finding things, yeah, he's a great guy, but yeah, we found some issues. Doesn't mean he's a bad person. It says, hey, we found an issue here, there, whatever it may be. This is because you're so focused on that being your best truck, that being your best driver, that you oversee some of the deficiencies that are discovered there. That's what happens. Now, and sometimes the guy that you think is the worst driver is the most safest person out there.
Interesting.
It could be, I mean, it can be that way, just because they might have a bad attitude, but you know what? They want to make sure that they're driving safely down the highways and they're doing their pre and post trip inspections. They know what to look for. They know when to ask questions. They might be grumpy and disgruntled, but you know what? They're safe. It just all depends. It really is. Every individual is different.
So when it comes to the pre and post inspections,
Mm-hmm.
does it ultimately lie on I don't want to say fault, but the responsibility of the driver when something comes up? Because he's checking the vehicle before and after. So when you go in and you find you're looking for things, ultimately, is it really the driver?
It could be. It could also be the shop didn't fix something that was supposed to be fixed.
But when
So
he catch it, that's where I'm going with that.
yeah.
It's his job to say, "Hey guys, ball bearing sounds like it's a little off there. Can you look at it? Yeah, we'll take care of it." They never do, and then there's an investigation,
Mhm.
and it turns out that we have an issue with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when they do fill out that post or pre-trip inspection, right? Let's say post-trip inspection, that's what's required to be turned in. Okay. When he turns that in, okay, he writes down, hey, wheel bearings are loose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whatever it is. He turns it into the shop. The shop is supposed to fix that. Okay. They're supposed to sign off on. There's 3 signatures that go on a driver vehicle inspection report. The driver, um, the one who is repairing it, okay, and then the one who verifies it. Okay, the one who verifies basically saying, "Hey, I verified the fix." All right. So when he gets that DVR back saying, "Hey, mechanic signed off saying I fixed it," I'm going to go back and look at it if I'm the driver and say and verify, okay, it was fixed. Okay. If that's not happening, they can come back and look at the driver. He's the last one in it. And then if the driver did his due diligence to do what he was supposed to, make the assumption that the mechanic did fix it, then it can go back on the mechanic and they're going to go, hey, you said you fixed it. What happened here? And then you get, that trickle or snowball effect and everything, they start looking at things. To give you a good example, real quick to what you just asked is I've gone in and done reviews with companies, investigations, and you start saying you have a vehicle that has an issue. Well, here's why the issue is they weren't fixing it because I keep seeing the driver write up every day, ball bearing issues, whatever it may be. Okay. Now do we have a,
Mm,
something to go off of? So that's how it comes back to be determined where the fault lies. Now, you got to follow that paper trail and you do your interviews and you do your justice on your investigation. That's how that works. So,
I don't mean to throw the driver under the rig, so to say, but ultimately, he's the first line of defense, it seems like.
mhm,
And if I'm a motor carrier company owner, I got to make sure I got the right drivers. I'm taking care of them because they got to have my back, me as
mhm.
the owner. So I'm seeing it here, Matt, where it's really, it is the driver. It's his world. He's the one that's got to report back. And if he doesn't do his inspections or he misses something, there's going to be issues with the vehicle. And then
Mhm.
obviously, or hopefully, you're going to find them and then the company can rectify it and take care of it.
Yeah, and that's one thing we've put together a driver program. We call it
Mm,
driver management.
wow.
And we work strictly with the drivers on how to do those inspections, what not to miss, and to make sure their vehicles are safe out there. You know, time is money, money's time. And when transportation's running, if they're not running, they're not making any money. And I understand that. But uh, you got to, and I'm not saying they don't think about safety. There's a lot of great companies out there, and I work with some great companies that safety, does come first. Um, but it is up to that driver to make sure he's doing his checks, and that's what we train them for. And then we go out and we do a walk around with them. We treat it just like it was a roadside inspection. Like, we talked about some of those roadsides.
Mm.
Let's do a walk around, and I'm going to show you what that officer's looking for, and I'm also going to show you what you need to fill out on that daily vehicle inspection report that you're supposed to do. You know, So, uh, you want to get that good muscle memory. You want to be able to see it, check it, make sure it's good. If it's not good, you're not checking it, you're writing it up. And we try to get that through their heads to just get in a good habit of doing that. Once you get in a good habit, you
Mm.
know, if if you see, I always tell folks if the if all the lights are red on the truck, you got four lights, you're looking at it and they're all red, and you're so used to being red and you're checking the box, and you walk around, there's a green light and you're so used to checking red. Will you see that green light? Maybe, maybe not.
Mm.
It's just you don't want to get complacent. So I always make sure they physically look at it and check the box.
And just imagine a situation where there's an accident and it could go either way in terms
Hmm.
of the eyes of the jury. And then it comes to light, well, look at all the infractions and violations that we have here that we found. It could skew it the other way.
Yes.
This Matt, this is cool talk. I could go forever. I
Yeah.
find it
Yeah.
interesting, and it really is the backbone of our economy. Transportation, but of course, making it safe. Uh, Somebody owns a motor carrier company. How do they connect with you? How do they find you? And even just start the conversation. How do they do that?
Yeah. They can reach us, through our website. It's dottrainingsolutions.com. You can reach me at my personal email. It's Matt at dottrainingsolutions.com. And our phone number, I'll give you my direct line, is 573 416 8203. Our 800 number and our info at DOT Training Solutions is on our website. We are getting ready to update our website here pretty soon. So if you've seen it, it might change here pretty soon, but it's still us. And look forward to working with anybody and everybody that needs compliance help and safety training and any type of consulting on that side of it. We work with companies again all over the world, as we've talked. So we're here for you.
Always a pleasure talking with you. Always learn a lot about this whole process, and appreciate it. Look forward next time we get together.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Matt. We'll be right
Yeah.
back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.